Hi, guys. Welcome back to Watch Your Six. We're delighted to have Danielle Ahluwalia with her. She's a really good friend of ours, and she's a phenomenal resource. She is with Foundation of Health, and she is a functional nutritional therapist. So, Danielle, welcome to the show. We're glad you're here.
Jason.
We're very excited. In our episode leading up to this, we talked a little bit to our audiences about the way health actually impacts wealth, and how a lot of our successful executives and particularly wealthy clients or athletes are having impacts where they're so fixated on growth and so fixated on their drive that they're actually suffering in other areas. So you've had a lot of experience where you've had individuals at the high net worth level or executives, and you've seen their health deteriorate. Maybe you could touch a little bit in the audience how that health's been so much impacted by their drive for wealth.
For people, it's not their focus is not health. It's kind of secondary, and people's main driving force is money and wanting to earn more money. But this comes at an expense of their health going forward. And I'm going to touch on this during this topic today.
Yeah. So when we talk about that with our guests and our individuals that view the program, that wealth is just one particular driving component, and people want to look at it from a standpoint: I want to achieve success, I want to have recognition, I want to have assets, I want to have money. But we also stress that if you don't have a healthy foundation, it's really ironic that you actually diminish your ability to be successful.
Yeah.
If you're not emotionally or physically strong, you're going to be incapable of deciding what stock to buy, what business to buy, what business to invest in. So maybe you can touch on if there's one area, because we can spend all day on this and we're going to have you back on a bunch of topics, but what's one specific thing you see that has the biggest nutritional or physical impact on a person when they're so driven, maybe almost too driven to be successful?
Well, firstly, I'm going to say health is wealth. So you can't have one without the other. So you have to look after your body in order to be successful. So if you want to be successful, you need to look after yourself. Now, one of the main problems and driving forces for ill health is chronic cortisol response. And because when you're going at it all day, every day, other things are compromised and your well-being is overlooked. People, and I see this a lot with a lot of executives that I work with, is they're not sleeping sufficiently either. They work late into the night. They're on devices. This is a big topic for me is blue light and light.
Well, that would be like computers, your cell phone, TV before you go to bed, those little pieces.
Yes, massively. Yeah. People don't realize the impact that it's having on the body. And I would say it's one of the most critical pieces that we are missing when we talk about health. When we think about health, we think about food predominantly and nutritional supplements. And within the biohacking community, it's what we can stick in the body, whether it's an IV or other methods. Right. But we are ignoring the elephant in the room, which is circadian biology. And that's a huge focus that I have with every single one of my clients.
Let me ask you a question. You touched on cortisol. So in a lot of our previous episodes, we brought out how, unfortunately, the emotional decisions individuals make actually impact their wealth. So one of the previous episodes, for example, we had a stock portfolio average. During a time period, the average yield in the market was about 7.8%. The average investor only did 3%. And the only difference there was emotion. So how much would cortisol irregularity, how much would circadian rhythm irregularity impact a person's emotion? And then follow up to that is, would it make them maybe more paranoid? So when you're talking about stocks, is the market going to crash? I'm going to go broke. All the negative energy that could drive them to make an unwise choice.
Absolutely, because cortisol, chronic cortisol use within the body contributes to anxiety, nervousness, depression, inhibits your ability to have a good restful night's sleep. So if somebody's chronically using cortisol, then it's going to be massively affecting their overall brain function, mental well-being. Right. Now, cortisol was only ever meant to be used in short bursts. Now, if we think about primitively how we would have used cortisol would have been in a stressful situation, which would have been in and out very, very quickly. So if we think about primitively how we would have used cortisol, if there was a stressor, like we're running from that tiger, the body would have increased the amount of cortisol. It switches off certain systems when we have more cortisol in circulation. So it switches off the digestive system. So now you can see how that would impact digestion if somebody was in chronic use of cortisol. And it also switches off the immune system as well. It immobilizes sugar from the liver via gluconeogenesis. So we produce more sugar from protein. So we've got the energy to run from that tiger. And then, if we, primitively, that would have been in and out. But now we are using cortisol all day, every day. And it can be the little things in life as well. Like, just being in a car and the stresses we get in the car, just rushing out the house in the morning. So these are all ways that we are constantly having elevated cortisol throughout the day. But from somebody with a high, with an executive, with a high workload, they're striving to be very successful, they will never be turning that off. It will be something that will be constantly elevated within those individuals.
So you touched on a key component, because we talk about Watch Your Six, and the goal of the show is to really help individuals that are being successful highlight the things they're not noticing. So when people are trying to invest, for example, they're so fixated on the rate of return, or they're so fixated on the stock that they don't look at the other variables. Or if they're trying to build a business, they think they have this great concept, but they don't know what they don't know. So if you were to tell an individual like that, let's say a professional athlete, let's say a successful executive, or a business entrepreneur, someone building them, what would maybe be 3 or 4 or 5 things that they'd want to think about, to look at, to identify if they're maybe susceptible to that? Maybe that's what's going on and they didn't even know it.
Yeah. So if somebody's, a common thing that I see is individuals not sleeping through the night, or they're only having 4 hours sleep and they think that's sufficient. So they think that they only need 4 hours sleep a night and they can function really well. This is because they've probably most likely got chronically elevated cortisol. Now, when you've got elevated cortisol, you can't make melatonin. They're the exact opposites. So, a common thing that I see is night waking around 3, 4 a.m. and that's it. They're up for the night, or they can't fall asleep, or they're going to sleep at 1, 2 a.m. and they're a night owl. And I say there's no such thing as anyone being a night owl.
Yeah, I'm guilty.
Imagine being a night owl 150 years ago. There'd be absolutely nothing to do. You would just go to bed.
The audiences, I just want to tell you, Danielle has made me go to bed now at 9:30. So we work with her team, and I go to bed at 9:30. I used to stay up till midnight. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And this is such a common thing. So I focus a lot on sleep hygiene in order to get those melatonin levels up. Now, it starts with light, and you may be thinking, what do you mean it starts with light? It starts with the sunlight. Now, when we made houses and we put ourselves indoors, that was a massive deviation from nature at that point. We are mammals. We're supposed to live outside with the other mammals, and we're supposed to live in sync with that light throughout the day. So having, being inside all day, most people don't even, they might only see outside when they're popping in and out of their car and walking in and out of a building.
Right.
So that's shocking. Like, we have less time outside now than those do incarcerated. Goodness. So now we're indoors all day, every day under artificial lighting. Now our body now does not know what time it is. So it's thinking it's summer solstice, all 12 noon, all day, every day, because we're under, blue lights from LED lighting in the room. We've got the lighting from our computer screens, our devices. So we're under this artificial lighting all day. If we don't open a window, windows only let in blue light now. So we're getting this constant blue light. Now, the light spectrum, natural light spectrum outdoors does not just carry blue light. It carries full spectrum light, which has got UV light, it's got red and infrared light, and at different degrees throughout the day. And this tells the body what time it is. So our body runs on a 24-hour clock, which is governed by a gland in the hypothalamus called the SCN, or the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This is our internal clock. and it's governed by light traveling through the eyes. And this is why we have black pupils. Black absorbs light. And this is telling the body what time of day it is.
Yeah.
So it's really important that your body starts to get these correct signals in order to function correctly. And
Right.
this is where melatonin comes in. So if you don't see all spectrums of light throughout the day, then you're not going to produce optimal melatonin at night so you can have a restful night's sleep. But the story of melatonin doesn't stop there. Now, melatonin is not just about having a restful night's sleep. It's one of the most important antioxidants. It's your cancer surveillance hormone. So if you're not producing optimal melatonin, you're putting yourself at a risk of disease from not optimally producing that hormone. So this is why I really focus on that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about it, talking to our listeners, so if you got individuals that, for example, day trading or stock traders, or my world, you know, you're sitting in front of 2 or 3 screens all day. Yeah. It's probably from 9 o'clock to 4:30 at least, because the market's open then. So you're figuring you're getting bombarded with blue light.
Yeah.
On top of that, you're inside. And then on top of that, your adrenaline's going, because if, again, we talk to our clients and our guests about, you know, investing and not getting emotionally attached and not getting overwhelmed when the market corrects a little bit. But if someone's bet the house on this stock and the stock dips dramatically that day and they've been in light all day, blue light, you're talking about a combination of horrible things that the body eventually is going to manifest something negative, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, not one of your systems will be working correctly if you're not getting the correct light. Now, I can comfortably say that I probably see 95% of men now with low testosterone levels, and it starts with light.
Wow.
So, you know, there are things you can do. Like, you don't have to think, wow, this is my job. I'm inside all day. I'm inside in front of those blue light screens. You know, this is where blue light blockers come in.
Yeah, I actually have those right here.
Yes. So this is what I arm all of my clients with, is making sure they've got 2 pairs of blue light blockers with them. So they have one that they wear before the sun sets, and this usually protects the eyes from about 60% blue light, because we don't need to block blue light in the day, because we do get it in the natural light spectrum. We just don't need to be overloaded with it all day. And then once the sun sets, this is where we get the 100% blue light blockers in, which are the red lenses, and red blocks blue. So this is why we use those. So this is what, you know, your viewers can start to use and implement in order to just protect themselves. And then try and get outside for as many sun breaks as possible. So before they start working in the morning, make sure you're outside for that sunrise. So one thing I always say is never miss a sunrise and never miss a sunset. So that's a rule that you've got from today.
That's
to implement.
Well, I do that religiously, and I think it's ironic, but you know, even when you're driven, I think the part that makes an individual successful is desire. But if they take that desire and they properly focus, right? They focus the desire, let's say, on a regimen of things that can be healthy too, it's going to be overall success. Because as you said, you can't have wealth without health. You can't really have health in today's world, unfortunately, without wealth, because a lot of these things do cost money if you have the resources.
It's very true. It's very true. You have to balance out both scenarios. Like, you have to make sure you've got time for self-care every day. Like, I design my day around my health. So I make sure that my day is around, you know, where I can go out and get my red light in the morning. I always exercise outdoor, not in a blue lit gym. And, you know, there's many resources now where you can have, you know, there's lots of apps now that you can use to help you through exercise routines that you can do outdoors every day.
Or even just going for a walk. You mentioned, you know, and one thing I've added, but at the end of my day, we manage hundreds of millions of dollars. I've got 3,600 clients. They're mostly business executives, athletes. At the end of the day, stress is fairly high. But I think one thing you talked about, and I do it, is, you know, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, switch off and go for a walk.
Connect back to nature. Like, we have to remember, like, who we are. We're humans. We are part of nature. We're natural beings on this planet. And we are so far removed from nature now. And this is why we are seeing chronic disease get worse and worse, not better. Now we know more now about food than we've ever known. But the state of chronic disease is getting worse.
Right.
And we need to think about the elements that we are missing, and we've got a huge nature part that we are missing.
So I think in summation, when it comes to what to be careful of, if we're talking to our listeners, and you're, let's say, a top athlete, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're just trying to build wealth, you're working 2 jobs, but you're saving money, you're trying to invest. The caveat is to make sure that the foundation, we talked about that earlier in our episode before we came on, about building a good foundation for the house.
Yeah.
So if you build a solid foundation where there are other factors that allow the body to deal with those things, it'll be more effective. Because I think it's unrealistic, right, to say you're going to get rid of stress entirely in today's world.
Yeah, it's not possible. It absolutely is not possible. And this is why I came up with the name of Foundations of Health for what I do, because I build on those foundations.
Yeah.
Without the strong foundations, you won't have a strong body, and you won't be resilient either. Because what you want ideally is you want to be mentally and emotionally and physically strong, so you can be very, very successful.
Right.
But if you've got weak foundations, there's going to be a point where that breaks. So this is where I focus on foundational health. And I focus on all the elements of nature that we need, but I also bring in other parts of a nutritional aspect. And this is not just food. Something else that I really focus on is lipid replacement therapy, which is cell membrane medicine. And because I believe that good health starts at a cellular level, because within our cells, we have our mitochondria. And mitochondrial insufficiency is actually probably implicated in as much as 95 to 99% of conditions, and only a very small percentage is actually genetic. So what I focus on in my practice is making sure we've got all the inputs for mitochondrial health. Because if you want anti-aging, you need good mitochondria, because your mitochondria help with what we call your redox potential. And that's basically your anti-aging potential of your cells. So cells are constantly renewing. So just as an example, the cells in your eyes should be renewing every 24 hours. The cells in your gut renew every 3 days. If they are not, that means you've got poor redox potential in that particular area of the body. And this is where you start to see degeneration of your eyes. You start to get gut issues. And this is because the cells aren't turning over in the rate that they should do. When we get cells that just don't die, this is where cancer happens. So we need to focus on cells, cellular health, and mitochondrial health for anti-aging and for resilience and protection.
That's really interesting. Now, I hate to switch gears, but one thing we do with our audiences, you and I talked earlier about it, but we like to have individuals on from different sectors, particularly entrepreneurs, executives like yourself, and also help the audiences to learn from what we've experienced. So we're going to switch hats, and we're going to talk to Danielle, the executive, owner of her company, the one that's in the health sector. And if you would, what have been some of the challenges that you've seen when you've tried to build your business? I'm not going to brag too much about you, but you're very successful. I know you work with a lot of high net worth clients. You're a delight to work with. You have a huge passion for people. And you've been very creative at what you've done. You've built a good practice, and it's getting really large. But what are some of the things you've witnessed that if you could do over, you might have done differently?
So I think when you work for another entity, it's really important that in those initial meetings that you have with that entity, that you have everything written contractually, what you need to protect. So anything that's your unique IP that you're bringing into that business, any clients that you bring into that business, make sure that that's all protected in that contract. So make sure that you don't fall short in that area, because it could come back to bite you.
Yeah, one of the things, just to jump on that point, one of the things I've seen a lot with entrepreneurs is they're very passionate about whatever their objective is or their goal. They're really good at that. Yeah. What they lack is the business savvy. They don't understand necessarily how to structure a corporate contract, or they don't understand how to protect IP. And sometimes what I think is they feel uncomfortable. Like, I really like this person. We seem to get along. The prospect sounds great. I don't want to make it awkward where I'm like, listen, if I leave, I take this and you take that. But it's critical because you're touching on that.
Yeah, and those conversations are uncomfortable, especially, within the sector that I work in, where it's about care, and it's very passion driven. So you don't, the monetary side of things and the contractual side of things aren't always something that is at the forefront of your mind, but you always have to protect yourself. No matter who you're working with, you have to protect yourself.
Right. And it would be good. I mean, I think hindsight, but it would be also nice to have a third party review documents for you, someone that you may trust. That's where we always recommend having a team, and making sure, even if it's something as simple as emails, where you've written something in email saying, this is what we're going to do. This is my agreement and understanding. At least you have a paper trail. I think you'd agree that probably would help. Yes?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think this is good when you mentioned the team aspect, because if you've got somebody fighting your corner, sometimes if those conversations are uncomfortable for you, you can have somebody there who manages that side of things for you, who can have those uncomfortable conversations. It happens in many industries. Like my husband is in the music industry. So for those conversations, when it comes to contracts, he doesn't have that conversation. His manager will go in and have that conversation. Right. And I think we all need that person within our business that, thinks about, the legal
Watch our six.
Yes. The legal, the money side of things, if that conversation is uncomfortable for you.
And that usually should happen with a business at the beginning, not the middle.
Yeah.
Because with most businesses that I've told clients, usually at the 4 to 7 year cycles where you really have to turn it up, and you've got to make a lot of adjustments to the business if you're wanting it to grow or deal with your 6-section strategies. So you're not wanting to renegotiate contracts when you're year 4 or 5 with an entity if you're working with them. What were some of the other things you see as far as running your business that have been a challenge?
For me, it's just making sure I've got the right people in place at the right time, especially from like a logistical admin perspective. As the person, the product of the business, you have to, you have to do your thing, and you need somebody in that background who's managing the logistics and the admin side of you, so they take that pressure off you. Because before you know it, your business could be, up and running quickly. You're very, very busy, and you don't have that right person in place to do that. Right. So I think it's trying to gauge when you need to bring that person into the mix as well.
So that's a great segue to what we call business plans. Fortunately, a lot of companies, startups, don't start with a physical business plan. They have something in their head. They have an idea. Some friends come along and say, do it this way. But with a business plan, we've always found it to be strategically very beneficial, because as the business evolves, what you're able to do is say, okay, I need this and this. The worst thing I've seen from a lot of small businesses is they have a really good idea, but they start poorly. And the problem in this highly competitive world, especially with social media, is you start getting a bad review, or you get a bad following, or you get some bad feedback, you're done. Yeah. So even if it's simply someone answering the phone, or how the email is structured, or what the domain says, or where they're incorporated, those are key things. Something else you touched on I thought was really intriguing when you mentioned people. One of the other problem I see with a lot of executives who are very successful is they're really bad at delegating. Because it's their baby, they want to do everything. Yeah. Have you seen that when you're in this?
This is a really, really common issue, I think, with a lot of people, is that delegation. Because you need to trust that person, they're going to do it in the way that you need it.
That's right.
And you also think, I haven't got time to train up another person.
That's right.
And, this is something that I commonly hear, and I felt it myself. But it's worth it.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. No, carry on.
The way I would calculate that, I always tell this to clients, is I say, well, first of all, how much is your time worth? Most of our clients are anywhere from $500 to $1,000 an hour. I mean, that's roughly their hourly rate, right? And then I'll say, okay, but today you made coffee, you answered your own phone, you faxed or emailed a document, so you basically paid someone $1,000 an hour to email somebody.
When you put it like that, it's like,
right, think about it, right? That's what you did, right? Or you paid someone $500 an hour to answer your phone. Yeah. Would you do that? No, of course not. So, like you just said, if you take the time to train them, put in good systems, we call them SOPs, it's quantifiable. It's something that you can say, okay, now I've really made some money, I've invested, but you're not throwing money away.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with
if you get the right person, they'll pick things up quickly.
Yeah.
And then you won't know what you've done without them.
Right. Well, I think also what you see with a lot of our executives, or even our athletes, to be honest, and some of our high net worth individuals, and we got celebrities, actors, is they don't take enough time to do due diligence on who they hire. So it's either hearsay or someone referred them. That's just great. But without a structured approach on how you're going to hire the person, like a checklist or an assessment or what kind of qualities you're looking for, it's really a crapshoot. You're bringing someone in, they seem really smart, they dress nice. Next thing you know, they're messing up your schedule, or they're even worse, maybe taking money from you. You don't know. So I think you're doing your due diligence is critical. We always tell our clients to create assessments, that's very foreign to people. But having an aptitude, some kind of, black and white, cut and dry thing really makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know whether you have this in the US, but in the UK, we have recruitment companies that do all that due diligence for you. I don't know how much it costs going forward, but sometimes it's worth using a company like that as well, because they kind of do all that legwork for you.
100%. Yeah, they're all kinds of what we call them headhunters in the States.
Okay.
But they are entities that do the same thing. But again, it's about taking time. But going back to the beginning of this conversation, if we also don't have a structure where we're taking time for ourselves, we're taking time for our mental, physical health, then our ability to dedicate energy to these things is going to be subpar. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest Achilles heels to my industry when it comes to wealth and management or success for our executives is procrastination. Yeah. And I think procrastination really comes from fatigue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I talk about focusing on cellular health and mitochondrial health, that's the brain as well. So with one of the therapies that I do, which is the lipid replacement, which is basically using fats in really high dosage, you will notice improvement in your brain function within 1 month of doing that. So that brain fog and that fatigue, which is really, really common now, it's probably one of the most common symptoms most people come to me with. That will start to be lifted when we're starting to get the correct nutrition into the body. But I can honestly say that if you don't look after your health, it will come back to bite you. Like I have a very successful executive who I've been working with for a long time. He has 1,000 employees. He's only in his mid-30s. And you would not think he was in his mid-30s. He must look at least 10 years older. Wow. He's completely drained physically. Yeah. You can see he's been running on cortisol for a very, very long time. Yeah. So, he's being forced to look after his health now. And you don't want it to get to that point, because it could really affect your business if you end up being knocked out long term because of ill health. So it's something that has to be just as important as your wealth goals. And
it's summation to our conversation, because I want to have you back to get in maybe some specific things people can do, maybe like a list of 5 or 10. Yeah. But the thing about this conversation that I find unique is that it's very hopeful. For the first time now, a lot of what they call diseases or chronic illnesses are actually reversible.
Absolutely.
Which is incredible if you take the time and energy, right?
Absolutely. So if we think about the mitochondria, now the mitochondria it can take a lot before you start to get symptom manifestation. When you start to get symptoms, this is where your mitochondria is tipped from 60% dysfunction to 70% dysfunction. So that's the window there, but you can be going a long time, 60% is quite a lot before you tip into that 70% bracket, and that's when you start to get symptoms. Now, there's so much we can do to support mitochondria and cellular health, which is basically going to give you overall rejuvenation. So all diseases fall into mitochondrial insufficiency, and depending on what condition you have, tells me in what state your cellular health has fallen into. Now, this is what we class as cell danger response. So it's actually a protective mechanism of the body. When we've had too much toxicity, too much emotional stress, too much environmental stress, our mitochondria say, oh, we can't deal with any more stress now. This is too overwhelming for the body. We're going to switch off the cell in order to protect it. But this is where disease manifestation happens. And what that is called is cell danger response. And we have 3 different categories of cell danger response. CDR1, CDR2, CDR3. So just as an example, cancer is when your cells are stuck in CDR2. So we have to restore that health cycle that their body runs through all day, every day, so it doesn't get stuck. And it is possible to help the health cycle restore when you give it all the correct inputs. And that's what I do. I focus on getting all those correct inputs into the body.
Phenomenal. Well, Danielle, we're going to let you go now, but we want to thank Danielle Ahluwalia with Foundations of Health. We are very grateful for you taking the time. We will have your email, if that's okay. We'll put you in the bio page for the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
So if individuals want to contact you directly, we're excited about that. And we do want to have you back. When you're back, I'd like to maybe have you help our audience think maybe 5 or 6 things that the person we talk to, the executive, the entrepreneur, the athlete, that they could do that are inexpensive ways to start turning the tide back on their health. But as you said, without health, you don't have wealth, and without wealth, you don't have health.
Yeah, absolutely. I can absolutely put 5 things down for you that won't cost you a penny.
Okay, great.
And we'll have
Thank you, Danielle. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, and we
You're
look forward to
welcome.
having the next show.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.